Now, wouldn't it be amazing, amazing, amazing to have a way to attract the perfect clients and speaking opportunities 24 hours a day by investing just 1 hour of your time? Well, welcome everyone to Women Speakers Association's WSA TV. I'm Laura Rubenstein here with Melanie Benson. Hi, Melanie.
Hello.
And what I'm excited about today is what you're going to talk about with regard to using a strategy with podcasting and podcast guesting in particular. So I want to introduce you a little bit more, give a little bio, and then we'll get into this strategy, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Okay, great. So for everyone watching, the Melanie Benson is your profit amplifier and visibility catalyst for expertpreneurs. After guesting on over 500 podcasts and interviewing over 1,000 experts on her show, Melanie's discovered a magnetic system for guest experts to use that transforms passive listeners into intrigued prospects and invested buyers while staying unique and aligned with your message. I love that, Melanie. It's so great. And I know you've invested so much of your time and and experience to give back to us. And tell us about what made you realize that podcast guesting was a great strategy for people to use in their business?
So I was having an experience one day. I had a friend of mine on the show, my Amplifier Success podcast, and he was telling me that he'd been doing a lot of podcast guesting, and he was really shocked by the results I was getting. I was sharing with him that most of the episodes that I go live on, if it's really focused on my niche, I was getting leads, and I could track back to several episodes, specific dollar amounts of new business that was generated. One of the podcast episodes was like $45,000 in new business. Another podcast episode, within 7 days, I had booked a $2,500 strategy session with somebody, and he's like, "Wait, what? What are you doing? How are you doing that?" And I realized that what I had found in my own approach was not something that everybody who was getting out on podcasts could really tap into. They weren't able to replicate that. They didn't understand how to do it for themselves. And it kind of got me curious, what was I doing that other people weren't? And then I started to look at my clients who were recognizing, okay, I get that podcasting is a really great way to never leave my home. If I don't want to go out and travel, I could still get on stages. These podcasts are available for people to listen to 24/7, but I'm not necessarily getting what I want out of the return on investment. What's missing? And so I started to study what I was doing, what other people were doing, and what was different. And that's when I started to quickly realize that I had a magnetic system, if you will, a sequence of steps that were actually able to generate real leads, real clients. But one thing that was really cool was I realized it was actually my secret sauce to getting me on other speaking opportunities that weren't necessarily going to show up in my lap any other way. And so without expensive bookers, without expensive speaking services, without a lot of extra work, literally investing 1 hour a week on getting on a podcast turned into a flood of speaking opportunities, other podcast guesting, and then, ideal clients finding their way through my client journey into my consult or whatever step they took.
Well, it sounds like it's given you access to more clients and another lead generation avenue at the same time, for both leads for your business and leads for speaking opportunities. Is that right? If somebody wants more speaking opportunities, is podcast guesting a good part of their strategy?
I just did a series and you were one of the featured guests, where I was talking to people who are actively out there guesting on podcasts. And I was asking them, what is the surprising benefit of being on podcasts? Maybe not the thing you thought you were going to get, but the thing that came out of it. And almost every single guest said they get so much unexpected speaking opportunities. So I'll just say I guested on the speaking show about a year ago. The interview had aired about 3 or 4 months later. And from that, the host themselves ended up booking me for another virtual event he's hosting. And then I got 3 other people who heard me on his podcast and said, can I book you to talk about that same topic? Because I think that would be a great fit for my audience. And so what happens is there's this buzz effect that I see happening where, first of all, if you do a good job really like getting a relevant topic on these podcasts, and these, it could also be virtual shows like we're doing right here, something that's getting in front of your ideal client, something that's in your industry that's going to be getting exposure, and then you follow the right process to keep that buzz in motion once the episode airs or the show goes live, then you actually can turn that into, I like to think of it like an opportunity magnet. People are seeing something they're interested in and going, oh, that's brilliant. How do I get that on my show?
Right.
And I'm at the point, and this is a high class problem to have. I feel very honored to be able to have this problem, is that we have too many things coming in, and my team's like, whoa, we're going to have to like filter some of this out. We can't keep up. And I think that's what most of us want. But a lot of people, Laura, and I know we know a lot of them in our community, they're really like feeling invisible, and they're feeling like they're getting passed over, even though they are a really powerful expert. They've got a really important message. They're getting bypassed to the people who are more visible. It's a great way to get that visibility boost without having to spend a lot of money and time trying to create it.
Yeah, and we're all about amplifying that visibility here through Women Speakers Association, you through your expertise. I mean, this is what we do. We do this 24/7. And I know next week you're going to do a full, complete training. I think it's called the 3-step system to getting booked on podcasts and turn your 24/7 client attraction magnet. Turn on your 24/7 client attraction magnet with your message. So that's happening on September 9th at 1 p.m. Pacific. So yes. Why should people come to this?
Well, so when people hear me talk about podcast guesting, and by the way, podcast guesting is different than having a podcast. Like they're different sides of the same platform and the benefits you can tap into. But podcast guesting is something that everybody can do, and everybody should do if you have a message and you want more speaking opportunities and you want to attract more clients. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how to get those bookings, because it seems to be a bit of a mystery for people. Sometimes you're making one of the common mistakes that is keeping you from getting booked, but sometimes it's just simply you need to know how to approach that process. And there's 3 key factors you need to have in place. One of them is you have to have a magnetic message. Okay, so I'll go through all of that next week. And the other thing is, what do you do once you have this episode? So it's not just, as Deb Coleman, our fellow WSA member says, it's not just a one-trick pony. It's not just something is a one and done, and then you lose the momentum. One of the things I've been teaching podcast guesters and speakers and everybody who's tapping into podcasting is that you've got to do something with it once it airs to keep that momentum going. And I have a 4-step system to turn a podcast episode into a 24/7 sales force for you, so that it's constantly generating ideal client leads, perfect speaking opportunities, collaboration opportunities that you might get passed over for because they can't see you and they don't know what you're doing until you create that buzz and momentum with your topic.
So it's not just about getting on the podcast. It's also about then doing something with it that works for you. So it's about working smarter, not harder. I love it. Another one of those strategies.
Yes, exactly.
So so I have a question, because you mentioned there's a difference between guesting on a podcast versus having your own podcast. So is it necessary to start your own podcast, or can you just use your podcast guesting strategy if somebody wants to grow and create this 24/7 system?
So hosting a podcast means you are tapping into what I consider to be one of the most powerful authority boosting platforms available to us. It's very similar to having a book, especially if you know how to position it and how to create buzz and momentum around your show. And this is my show. And it's not for everybody. It is not the right strategy for everybody who recognizes the value of authority. And there is an investment in a good show. There is a strategy behind getting the show to actually generate return for you, whatever that return is. But everybody who has a message, everybody who has some kind of expertise, everybody who's ever authored a book, every speaker on this planet can tap into podcast guesting. One, almost always it's free. Some people charge to be on their show, but more often than not, getting on a show is free. Two, the visibility of a podcast is 100 times more poignant than even a speaking opportunity, because the podcast doesn't go away. It's always there, always available to be listened to. So and if you have your own podcast, you should be podcast guesting to drive listenership to your show. So there's a lot of benefits to it. It goes way above and beyond. I always tell people, don't start a podcast till you've got a strategy. I know a lot of people are like, just do it, follow the passion. Okay. But that's where PodFade comes from. And a lot of people, 10 shows in, 20 shows in, 100 shows in are like, I'm not making any money. I don't think I want to keep doing this anymore. Okay. We need a strategy.
A strategy that you're going to work and that you test and tweak over time. And so that's a strategy for your own podcast. And then you have this 4-step way to increase the visibility of podcasts you guested on. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And think of it like a book, Laura. Like if you're going to publish a book, you don't expect the publisher to do all the work. If you're going to be on a podcast, don't expect the podcaster to do all the work. There are hidden benefits in you taking the lead and driving visibility to those podcast episodes that you're featured on.
Yeah, that if you just show up, it will come kind of thing. Mentality is kind of the death of some of our entrepreneurs out there. I really think you have to have that plan of how you're going to work it and make it work for you. So absolutely. I love that. And so on September 9th, that's next Wednesday at 1:00 Pacific, 4:00 Eastern, you're going to be leading this whole presentation through Women Speakers Association's Speaker Success Training program. And so for those people who are Premier members, you get to come for free. This is part of your membership. So make sure that you mark your calendars and you go and you just have to go to the Premier group, because that's where you're going to be broadcasting it. And also, if you can't find it there, then go into your back office and you'll be able to find how to get the Zoom link to get on. Actually, you want to register for it so you can actually participate with you, because this is a 90-minute training. Is that right?
Yeah. And we do live Q&A too. And I think one of the things that comes up is sometimes people have questions that are keeping them from actually moving forward on this. And so I like to be able to kind of clear that misinformation or help you really get clear. How can you leverage this strategy? How can you use it to fill your own programs, to fill your speaking roster?
Yeah. And you're a master of helping people move forward. Like if anybody's thinking, oh, I just don't need another thing. Well, you'll be able to determine from what you're saying, Melanie, and what you're teaching, whether it is for you, and then help them move through any blocks they have. So you get the whole package with you. For those of you who are not yet members and you want to attend this, you can buy this training at speakersuccesstraining.com. And again, if you are an existing Premier member, then you want to log in and get the Zoom link, or go to your email. You have an email that comes out on Mondays with the link to register for the Zoom, so you can be in there and get the questions you want answered. So is there anything else you want to tell people about what they're going to get when they come on September 9th?
Well, I think one of the things that holds people back is they have either tried getting on podcasts and they haven't seen a result, or they know they should be doing it, but there's something that's not clear about their message. And so I've been told by a couple of people that one of the things I'm uniquely talented in is helping people really understand a magnetic message that pulls people towards them. And I find that a lot of, especially our women in Women Speaker Association, if they're maybe changing directions, or they've got a new offering, or they're maybe a little bit newer in this whole thing and they haven't quite honed in that message, they may be holding themselves back from this very powerful visibility strategy. And they're missing out on this unique opportunity to ride this growth wave in podcasting. Look, as of April to 2020, there were 1 million podcasts. 1 million podcasts active in Apple. And what that means is about 50 to 60% of those shows are actively looking for content. That means they need us. There's no more powerful time. Yeah, they need you. And there's no more powerful time in this world to get your message out in such a easy and growth opportunity fashion. So we got to do this. The world needs your message.
And Melanie, you're so passionate about helping people get there that this is going to be rich, people. So if you haven't yet registered for it, please do. And get on the Zoom call, because you will be able to ask your own questions. You'll be able to work through whatever, things that are not clear for you about your own process, maybe even test out some of your ideas. This is a 90-minute training. This is not a light, like what we're doing right now. It's just an overview. That there's a 3-step system to getting booked, the mistake. Is there any common mistakes you want to point out that people make?
Yeah, I'll get into 3, maybe 5 of them, depending on time. But yeah, I think that sometimes people don't realize they're making mistakes. And I mentioned earlier that a lot of times people will mention to me, Melanie, like, I tried podcast guesting and I wasn't getting any results, or it wasn't really working for me the way I thought it was, or feels like I'm spending a lot of money and time getting booked on shows, which should not be happening, but you're not getting traction. And so let me just say a couple of the mistakes right out of the gate, and I'll go a little bit deeper into some of the common ones on the training. But one thing that I know is happening over and over and over again is experts know their stuff. Experts know their body of work. They can talk about it in their sleep, and they show up on a podcast and they're winging it. So they're winging the conversation. And I know you know your stuff, but here's the thing about a podcast. A podcast is a unique media opportunity. And the way in which you communicate what you do, it is the more you find a way to kind of shape your message and hone it into really compelling talking points, the more effective you will be at A, staying on point and not becoming a rambling rose and going all over the place, and B, taking people on a very compelling journey that moves them out of what I call that passive interest. They're passively interested. They're multitasking and they're like walking the dog or pushing their kid in a stroller or driving, to an appointment, or they're at the gym. Not right now, but usually at the gym. And they're not, or a treadmill home, and they're not actively plugged in. And when you do a good job of crafting compelling talking points and doing something, what I call creating showstoppers, which I will dig into and explain what those are and how those work next week. When you do that, you get people to do what I call have that lean in effect, and the intrigue factor kicks in. And now they want to know more. And this is what's missing. A nice conversation doesn't enroll anybody. They're like, oh, that was nice. They're not going to do anything. And we know as speakers, especially if you've been trained in any kind of fashion of how you speak to get people into action, you have to craft your message so that it moves people into action. That's how you get people out of that complacent, that passive energy that's like, oh, that was nice. And you move them into intrigue, and then you get them invested in action with you. That's what we've got to learn how to do. And it's not hard. It's just a different way of thinking for people.
And there's some practice that's involved in that. So you think about it and practice it, and then you're pretty confident and ready to go out and get those guesting. I can't wait for your training next week, September 9th. Who should attend?
So if you are a speaker, you are a business owner, and you have a program or offering or something that you've developed a branded message around and you want more exposure, you're a leader of an organization that you have a message that you're really passionate about, you are an author, you have a book and or a series of books that you want to get more traction, more people reading it, and you have a body of expertise that you would like to enroll people in learning from you, then this, or you're a podcast host and you want to get more listeners, all of these are really great reasons to get your message on podcasts, on virtual shows, on the online platforms. Because basically everything I teach with a podcast, almost all of it is translatable to any guest expert opportunity, any moment, any place you have a chance to speak and share your message.
We even have someone says, this is perfect timing. She's being interviewed tonight. And 10 days, she has a third one. So Carol, it would be great to have Melanie coach you through it. She's amazing. And thanks for being here. And thanks for the love we've gotten here from Cynthia and Carol and Winnie. And, we do have the whole WSA publishing where we have 40 authors coming in, and every one of these authors now going to have a best-selling book. And this is perfect if you're in a collaboration book, or like our WSA publishing Voices of the 21st Century books, or you have your own book. It doesn't really matter. Or you're thinking of having your own book, right?
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I was just talking with a fellow podcaster in my series, and one of the things that came up is he leveraged a podcast tour to help drive traction to his book. And what he said is, I actually didn't realize how early I should have started it. So even if you're just thinking about a book, you're just thinking about an event, you're just thinking about a program, you want to get, and part of getting your messaging down really helps you create the marketing for all of it. And, podcasts can be a great asset, a part of that launch strategy.
I love it. Another podcast secret. It's a great way to promote your book.
And not just when it launches, but for years. Because I have had guests and clients tell me that they sold more books the second year, the third year, the fourth year. Because I know some of our amazing women in the WSA publishing, they've mentioned like, oh, I was hoping I sold more books the first time. Hey, this is a ongoing process. There are things you can do to keep that book moving in the market, getting in your client's hands. Just takes a little intentionality and some strategy with how you show up and use podcasts.
So be sure to join us next week, September 9th. That's Wednesday at 1:00 Pacific, 4:00 Eastern. If you're a member of Women Speakers Association, you get that in the Premier group, and you want to register, use the link that came in email to you. And if you're not, and you want to check this out, it's well worth it. It's a bargain. And go to speakersuccesstraining.com or join WSA at joinwsa.com, and you'll get it as a part of your membership, along with all of our speaker success training and visibility tools we have for you. Melanie, once again, always fun with you. Great wisdom comes out even in this little preview. So if you're just tuning in, please go back and watch this again. And thank you. We'll see you on Wednesday the 9th at the Speaker Success Training.
Thanks, Laura. Bye, everyone.
Bye. And Carol's going to be there. Thanks. See you there.
Yay.